for Chris until he arrives. Scott is still out sick. I'll appoint Roger to vote for Scott. And Jake hasn't arrived yet. I'll appoint Tony to vote for Jake until he arrives. And Rick is not here. Johnny can't make it. And that gives us 7 voting members. We have a quorum, and we can have an official meeting. So the first part of our meeting is administrative board work, where we got our business done. We have new plans, public hearings. One is a municipal project for cell tower communication. It's not a cell tower, but a communication tower. And then we have an update from Woodmont Commons. So we'll proceed to administrative board work, approval of minutes. We have minutes from the 5th of February and the 12th of February. I'll take each separately in case someone wants to abstain because they weren't present at a meeting.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the 5th of February.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Al. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? And chair votes affirmative.
I'll make a motion to approve the February
12th.
12
Yeah.
Second.
minutes.
Motion by Mary, second by Al for the 12th minutes. Any discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And Ted abstains because Ted was not present. So that's 601. And both minutes carry and are approved by the board. Regional impact determinations. We have anything, Colleen?
No, there are no regional impact determinations this evening.
Okay, next, we have discussions with the town staff. There's a lot line merger that's part of the
Yep.
Woodmont.
So you do have a lot merger request. We do need the board to take a vote to authorize the chair to sign off on this. This is merging the parcel 1041-1, which is 15 Apple Tree Lane, with 1041, the larger Pillsbury Development property. This lot merger is actually a condition of approval of the subdivision that will be creating the lot that the Edgewood project is going to be on. So we've reviewed this with assessing and do recommend that the board authorize the chair to sign this.
I'll make a motion to authorize the chair to sign the lot line merger.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mary, second by Al for the chair to sign the lot line merger. Any discussion by the board?
I have a
Questions?
question.
And?
Just curious if the combination of the lots now will affect the assessment of that area at all?
That would be a question for our town assessor. So I do not believe so, the act of merging them, and this is really just immediately upon completion of this, there's gonna be the impending subdivision creating the Edgewood lot, so I do not believe so, but I would need to defer to Rick. We can ask him if he can provide some input.
Other than that, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if we see her tonight, we'd have an answer right away. Anything else? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Abstentions, chair is affirmative, and I will sign the lot merger. Colleen, I think there's another, yes.
Yep, so you have one other item in your packet, and I apologize, because I think that when this got scanned from the building department, part of it might be upside down. So the building department received a request from Renegade's Pub, which is in the former Cafe Teresa location on Nashua Road, for those of you, I'm sure you're aware. There's an existing patio that's about 30 by 20 feet that's out there. They are requesting, and this is the part that's upside down, they are requesting a building permit to put basically a simple roof structure over that existing patio in order to, provide screening from the weather. So this is not something that we feel would rise to the level of requiring site plan review by the planning board, but we did want to run this past you and make sure that you were aware this application came in, find out if the board had any questions or concerns. Like I said, it's an existing patio. The patio has been there at least since the early 80s that we can find back to our site plans, so it's adding this roof structure over it. If there are any questions or concerns from the board?
Board have any problems, questions, concerns?
I just have
Ann?
a question. Which way the angle of the roof is going? Towards the front of that parking lot?
The angle of the roof is going towards, to the east, so now my other page
To
rotated.
the east?
To the, yeah, that's
That-
weird,
It's to the building,
So-
isn't it?
because it shows 20 feet
It's,
and,
it,
No, it's
going towards
the
exit.
road.
So the building is oriented east to west. It's going parallel, basically, to the roadway. So when you're looking at the
Okay.
road,
So it'll
you're gonna
go
see the
not to
slant
102, to the
going
other road.
Oh,
towards
whatchamacallit
this
road.
landscape area
Oh,
that's to the side.
oh,
If you look on
okay.
the screen, Ann,
But I mean, it's right here, it'll
it's,
go right
this is,
here.
this is the
Yeah, I
high
just-
point, and it slopes in
Had it
this
oriented
direction.
backwards.
oh, go ahead.
This is the high point, it
Okay,
slopes in this
that's-
direction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It
because
didn't,
they
it wasn't
can't
clear
have
in
that
the
slope
drawing.
into their
the
freezer
parking
that's
lot's in
there.
the front of the
There,
building,
yeah.
so.
Correct.
Then that would be to the east that way there.
That makes sense.
So is the board set with that, letting staff handle it?
Do you need a motion?
No, just wanted to,
Get good
information only.
consensus anyway, so.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Nope, that's all I have for,
Anything, John?
Nothing this evening.
Okay. Anything from the board?
No, I mean, just to remind everybody to vote.
Yes.
next week.
It's coming Tuesday, the 10th of March is town meeting and school district meeting, so you'll be able to choose your officers for the ensuing year and also to vote on the articles that, and where the money goes and how much. So please vote. Okay, that's all I got. We'll go to new plans, and we have a non-binding review and discussion in accordance with RSA 674:54 for governmental land use for the construction of a communication tower and associated site improvements. This is at 120 High Range Road, tax map 6, lot 6, zoned agricultural residential 1. Londonderry Fire Rescue is the applicant, and the town of Londonderry is the owner. And this is a municipal project which does, basically, in the state of New Hampshire, and quite a few other places, municipalities can do what they want to do. They aren't encumbered by any rules, regulations, site plans, subdivision regs, things like that. And that is by statute in the state of New Hampshire and also by English common law. So that's the way things operate.
So as a brief overview, Art, as you summarized, is a governmental land use. This is subject basically to the non-binding review and discussion. We have notified the abutters. This is a public hearing that's been posted in the newspaper. What the fire department, and it's not a communication facility just for fire purposes. It is for fire and police emergency communications and public works. So I'll have Mike and Jeremy speak more to the project, but they've been working with myself and with John on this location to basically fill in a gap in communications infrastructure. So we've been coordinating on the project and recommending best management practices, compliance with the town's wireless communications facility ordinance and site plan regulations as is practicable, but there are, this is exempt from any of our municipal regulations. So I'd ask Jeremy and Mike if you want to give an overview of what the tower project is.
Hi, good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mike McQuillan, I'm the operations chief for the fire department. With me is Jeremy McGue, who's one of my battalion chiefs that oversees the communication division. This was part of our communications upgrade that we started a couple years ago, where we brought it for the town is a public safety for highway, police, and fire, just in trying to upgrade our communication system into the 21st century and stuff for the safety of our providers. I'm going to let BC McGue kind of go into that a little bit more as to the changes that have taken place and why we've done this, but this was one of the sites that we identified that was a hub for police and the Department of Public Works to have the height and the tower for the communications equipment for them to be able to operate, if you will, town-wide and have that secure network.
So the majority of this project is to increase our coverage for emergency communications around town. Also, we're trying to replace all of our equipment that's seeing signs of aging. Electronic equipment, it needs a lot of upgrading, so that's what we're up to now. The big problem we have right now is our current system uses RF, or radio frequency, to get back to our central station, which allows us to go through trees and some minor overhangs and stuff like that. But right now, our problem is that we need line of sight for all of our different towers that we have proposed throughout this project. To get the line of sight, we need to elevate all of our equipment and antennas, and we use a lot of microwave technology, which requires that line of sight, which is one of the reasons why we're looking today for that tower up at the DPW. We have to get up a little bit higher. The DPW is a current site for the LPD repeater, so the police has equipment there, but the fire department does not. The current facility there does not support what we need to do for our project, so that's why we're proposing a tower to go up at that location.
Just in summary, the tower is 120 feet tall, and I believe John's met and had discussions with them about the location of a generator pad, electrical service, and changes that might need to be.
The layout of the layout is as indicated on the plan itself. Again, a 14 by 14 tower pad, 12 by 20 shelter, and then a 5 by 5 generator pad. So the layout is pretty straightforward. We have Steve Cotton has met with the radio people, my understanding, discussing power needs. So it's pretty straightforward. Again, nearly 175 feet from the easterly property line, and 300 feet from the southerly property line.
As a visual comparison, this tower will be pretty much exactly like the one that was built at the firehouse next door that sits behind it. With the exception of the shelter that's underneath it. Clearly, we don't have one there because it's in the station, but there'll be a shelter next to it with the generator pad as well.
So I guess there's no problem with DPW having it up there, the things that operate. FAA, they have any, because I know there's some of the instrument landing stuff that's up
Again,
there.
Yep,
contacted,
we've made notification to the FAA, and we've actually officially submitted the paperwork to them for review, and we're waiting to hear back from them. From our understanding, it's not an issue where that is with the flight path, and it won't affect them in any way. It'll just be part of the notification and go into an official record for them so that they know there's a tower there.
Okay, well, I'll go to the board and I'll go to the public for input, and we're looking for input anyway, so Ann?
I noticed there's another tower on Pillsbury Road, just one property south of that, basically.
Yep.
What's the problem with putting on that AT&T tower?
One of the problems that we have with putting it on other towers is the amount of equipment, because that's one of our hubs. We're actually working in partnership, or at least trying to, with some of the area cell towers around town to put some of those microwave links up. The microwave links that we need to put up there, along with what they call the antenna whips that go up, they need to be within a clearance of any of the cell phone companies that they have. Their equipment can't be near that because it interferes with it. So basically, because it's police, fire, and DPW that's going on this one site, we can't get onto their sites because we have too much equipment. If we put it up there, they would have to remove theirs, which clearly they're not going to do. So that's why we had to look at building our own.
Okay. How tall is that one on Pillsbury Road? I'm just curious.
I don't know. Yeah, not off the
Does the
top.
town know? I couldn't find it anywhere.
probably doing it.
Yeah, I can pull the site plan and let you follow up if
Yeah.
you want it.
Yeah, that
Okay,
goes-
I
goes back
noticed
quite a
also-
ways.
Excuse me?
That goes back quite a ways, but I'm sure we've
Yeah,
got info on it.
77 or something like that.
Yeah.
It says 3 new proposed tower sites. Have you picked any locations around town yet?
Yes, we've looked at, this is the first one where this one kind of connects everybody together to use all of the sites. One of the other places we're looking at building is on Josephine Drive where the water tower is. And the other location that we're considering is Auburn Road, the old town dump, basically, is putting one out there because those will reach to the areas that we're having problems with currently making that radio communication transmission to the officers and the firefighters.
Don't we have a contract to put solar on that site? Am I wrong?
Nope, you're correct, we do, and we're not going to be anywhere near that.
Okay.
We'll actually be on the other side of it.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
All set, Ted?
All set, sounds great, guys. Good to see you.
Harry?
Do they emit electromagnetic fields? These?
There is a field, but that's not really my specialty. I'd have to refer to the radio company. There are precautions when it comes to climbing towers for workers that have to do work on there. It's generally not an issue with people that are around it. I can, for example, we do a lot of work down at the base of Nelson Road, down behind the softball fields, and I'm permitted to go working down below at the base of the tower with no problems.
For extended periods of time or just for short periods of time?
There is no limit as far as I'm aware of, so I can work there.
We can certainly get the answer for that from you from our radio specialists, if you will.
Okay, I mean, I appreciate your raising the tower, so it's not like, I mean, the height will be higher, so it would be further away from people.
Yep.
And so even if there is a field, it may not reach the ground, and that would be my concern.
Right.
Even though you're 150 feet away from the, the nearest person, if the kids are playing in the backyard there, I
Right.
wouldn't want them to be exposed. And there's nothing,
Understood.
I'm sure that it's safe. I just feel as though I have to bring it up because I have to bring it up.
Absolutely.
The way the equipment works is it receives radio signals from the fire trucks and the personnel using that, and then it sends the information as data over a microwave link. So it's a focused beam that's above the tree level, so it doesn't radiate per se around in a field. It's more directional towards a specific point that we've outlined.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Tony?
I'm all set, thank you.
Wow. Wait a minute, Tony, you're all set.
Doesn't happen too often.
Save it for the next time.
One question for these guys. How long will the generator keep you guys up and running if the power goes out?
I want to say it's up to 8 hours. It's going to end up being I believe the old generator from the central fire station that was reutilized out there. We're actually going to use that to power the building. The current generator they have there now, in speaking with Steve Cotton, he feels that would probably be a better choice, is just to upgrade that generator and put the old one that we had at Central.
I guess however long a 1,000-gallon propane tank will.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
good.
That information I don't have.
That's a long time. Yes, all right, I'm all set.
Okay, Roger?
I'm all set.
Okay.
Art,
Yes.
would it make more sense to have an on-demand generator, just in case we do have a wide amount of time that we're out of power?
Well-
And you'd have to refill on gasoline on that instead?
I would have to talk with Steve about that, about getting that into the cycle with filling the tank on a regular basis and making sure that's done. The generator should be hooked up so that as soon as the power's out, that will kick on. But-
And I would just hate to see that, we're in an emergency situation and having it need to be refilled all the time when
Right.
we just spent all this money to put in these towers. So,
Well, Ted, again, we have diesel backup generators for our pump stations, and again, years ago, when we had that power outage, we ended up having to fill those.
mhm.
So again, when it's, emergency situation, that's something that we make sure that we get back to. I think we purchase our diesel through Eastern Propane or whoever, Eastern, and they know that we're an emergency,
Okay,
they don't mess around.
okay,
They'll come every day and,
okay.
Okay. I'm going to go to the public for any abutters or anyone have any questions, comments, concerns. Just introduce yourself for our records, please.
Right here.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jim Paquette. I live on 190 Pillsbury Road. My property is across the street from the existing cell tower and would be between, I believe, the proposed tower and the existing cell tower. So I have an interest in this. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Ann. You both asked questions that I already had. I appreciate that. Follow up on Mary's question. So we talked about the radiation. I'm a ham radio operator, so I have a little experience in this area. So thank you for your answer. Focused beam, I don't have a concern with that. Long-term, the usage of this tower, could that change and introduce new radiation concerns?
I guess it all depends on what we do to it. Typically, our equipment's going to be the same as far as antenna. Maybe the quantities may go up depending on what we need to do in the future. The current frequency band, we're doing VHF frequencies. It's in the 151 megahertz range. We don't really anticipate increasing a whole bunch anytime soon. Once we get this project underway, it's gonna serve us for quite some time, so I don't see the need for adding additional equipment to that site.
So let me rephrase.
Sure.
If my grandchildren are playing in the backyard, should I be concerned at some time in the future about radiation?
I would have to refer to the radio people, because I don't know too much specifically to give you information about radiation hazards.
So can we get that report? Is that what you asked, Mary?
Well, I asked about electromagnetic fields. I know that everything has a field, I just don't know how low that would come. And if it's a direct, beam, you know, I mean,
Yes.
we're just imagining what this looks like right in our heads, because it's invisible.
Right.
But I mean, if it's a direct beam, I would imagine that the electromagnetic field would be very contained as well,
Kind of focused.
focused. And so
Correct.
since you are raising the
Right.
thing, it would be higher, it would be further away. I guess if they have shown that they don't have concern with kids playing on the fields at West Fields, which are right underneath all of those electric high, wires.
Or the electric lines. yeah.
Right, which are much stronger, they have much stronger electromagnetic fields than this probably would, then I guess I would feel safe.
Mhm.
But, I mean, I have the same concern you do, because long-term effects, we just don't know, but so I would appreciate if you guys
Yeah,
could
absolutely.
find
We'll reach out to the
somebody
radio
to.
vendor to get some additional information.
If you
Thanks.
can,
Yeah.
if you get that information provided to me, and then I can make sure that it, gets on the website and that
Yes,
it
we
gets
get up
is
on
available
our
to the board as
website
well.
what we do know about it. Because I know there's electromagnetic radiation everywhere, especially from the cell phones, so. But it would be, I think, helpful for us. to
Yeah,
get,
absolutely.
Exactly what is coming from this tower.
I think it's gonna be time for us to start wearing the aluminum hats.
The antenna.
So another question, 120 feet is what I heard, the height of the tower. We don't know the height of the cell tower.
The other one
On
across
the other
street,
one,
yeah.
we don't know if it's higher or,
No,
or
that,
shorter,
that's
right?
something we can find out.
Yeah, I can check, I
Okay.
need to pull the approved site plan for that, but I can verify that and see what the height of that tower is.
do we know if this tower will be visible from Pillsbury Road?
That I don't know. We didn't do a balloon
We
test.
didn't,
know
I
it's
don't
one
think there's
of
any
those
visuals done on it, but,
Oh, no, we didn't,
I don't know if
I
that's
don't know
gonna
So
what
be
the
I
visibility
would
would
be interested in that. Potentially could affect property value. And my follow-up question would be, so I see a big town garage lot. I'm familiar with that.
Yep.
Why did you pick that particular location as opposed to maybe a point further north on that property?
So in regards to the location, that was the area we found that was best suitable for pulling in utilities. It was closer to the building, had easier access for generator hookups and the line power coming to the building. And
The highway department also.
the highway department, they didn't have immediate plans for any additions, and I'm not gonna throw anyone under the
Correct.
bus at
You're
this
right.
point, but they thought of perhaps in the future that they would be putting additional buildings on the other side of the lot, so they're thinking of future expansion of the DPW site.
And as far as property values, the fact that you'll have a transmitter is gonna help your property value, not hurt it, because they're gonna be able to respond so much quicker. They're not gonna, right now, the problems that we've heard about is that they don't have the ability to contact home base for help. And now you will have it because you'll have this.
Yeah,
Access point.
It's part of a system, I think it was first brought, I think we had a town meeting 3 years ago. I think it was first broached to the public and everything, is to help communication with police and fire and DPW, because the areas in town, they're out of communication. Especially at the police at the airport, they're out of communication. There's other areas in town too.
Correct.
The same with the fire department. So it gets a little frustrating. I mean, they have to use a telephone to contact base, so this way they're be in constant communication. So it'll help the public. It's really in the public interest.
The other thing, too, to note is you guys are not gonna crank 1,500 watts out of that tower. What,
Yeah.
10, 25 watts at the most?
Yeah, and this is not a transmit site, which is different than, so there's 3 transmit sites proposed throughout the town, Central Station, somewhere north and somewhere south. This is not a transmit site that's pushing out at the most 100 watts of power, which really isn't that much at all either.
So you're actually not gonna put out any RF at all?
No, we're not. Yeah, we're just sending signal from the receive. It's basically a receive site that we're sending back to our home base station.
Great.
So don't get me wrong, I understand the public interest in the public good here, I'm not against that. Just one other question, we were talking about the generator. Now, this is a backup generator,
Correct. Yep.
so power interruption, this generator will kick on?
Correct.
And that's the situation? Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for
You're
coming.
Also, you know where to get a hold of us if anything else comes up, so.
Yeah, so just for the public, just to get it out there, we're looking at a schematic. If I'm looking at this correctly, it looks like a 6'6" tower, 6 feet 6 inches on each leg, and it's gonna be a triangle.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
So we're not talking about a 20 to 30-foot monopole going up in the air.
Nope.
It's 6 feet 6 inches per, give or take.
Correct.
Yep.
I can't do triangles, but
But
it's a 6 foot
looks
6
like-
inch square, and inside of there is a triangle. So Larry Martin's watching right now. He's gonna have my head, but math teacher at the high school. But anyway,
Triangles are important.
yeah. So so it's a small footprint,
Yes.
Yes.
erector set style look on the outside
Mhm.
with some whip antennas on it.
Yes.
Correct.
That's a halfway decent description
Yep.
of what people will see. Now, I did do some homework on this. I got in trouble twice. Once when I was at the kindergarten because I forgot that they had a morning and afternoon session, and apparently I parked where the buses go. But I was walking around trying to look at line of sight, and then I went to Saddleback, and I parked my truck on the road and was walking around Saddleback, the road that abuts the highway garage site, and someone opened up their window and said, "Get out of here, I'm calling the cops." So it was an interesting field trip.
Careful.
But to answer the questions of the gentleman on line of sight, it's heavily wooded. This site, looking at the topos, is at 400 feet. Saddleback, the houses are set at about 360. So the bottom of the tower is 40 feet taller. The houses on Pillsbury are at 400, 405, 380, 390, in that range. And it's pretty heavily wooded there, but, you know, is it gonna be seen? That's a tough one, but what's gonna be seen is gonna be, my opinion, no less offensive than the monopole that's on the driving range now at Crossroads. So,
And if I could comment on that. So one of my concerns was, you know, would there be clear cutting around,
Oh,
around
right,
this?
yep.
And it doesn't,
site's
it
clear.
doesn't sound like it. Well, it's wooded, as you said. It's wooded between.
no,
Not where
no.
this is going, though.
no, the
all
site where
clear.
it's going on is totally flat, clear, there's just buildings on it.
And then there's
on the
wooded
highway
areas
garage.
between Saddleback and to Pillsbury.
Yep,
That's,
so,
that's
so
all setback, that's
Yep.
all setback.
That's all
That'll
setback,
stay
yeah.
the same.
It'll stay
Yeah.
the same,
So
yeah,
what's wooded will stay wooded.
that's fine, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's no trees to be cut down.
Yep.
The site is all flat, you know, ready to accept whatever it is they're
Okay.
gonna do, other than footings and piers, and, you know, there'll be, quite a bit of digging to get the footings and the piers in, but other than that, the site is flat.
Very good. Thank you.
So
Thank
would
you-
there be
thank you for coming.
blasting?
There should not be any blasting. I don't anticipate any of that type of material would be taken out. And in regard to the tower pad, it does show on the schematic that it's a 14 by 14 foot tower pad. That's actually the slab, which will be underneath the ground. The visible part of the foundation is only, like you said, about 6 foot square.
6'6", according to the schematic, yeah, so.
So good representation, again, is at the fire stations, pretty much identical as to what we're gonna get. The configuration of antennas on the top, a little bit different, but pretty similar.
And it does say on the drawing that it's 300 feet from the lot line to the south.
Yep.
And 175 feet to the east, so there's enough of clearance there, too.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? If not, we'll
Thank you very much.
We'll,
Thank you,
there's
appreciate it.
nothing, we patiently listen, and what we hear is relayed to staff, and they'll work with you, so.
You're not putting
Thank you
any
very much.
electronic signs out there, are you?
Not at all.
Nothing flashing.
Gonna flash, police tower, fire.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we move into other business. We have an update on, annual update from Woodmont Commons on the activities there. We have some information from them. This is also on our planning board website. So people who are hearing this, or are hearing this and want some more detail, go to our website, please.
I do not. I can use the mouse if you wanna.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
I'll turn the light.
And welcome, Harry.
Hello.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been. I see you're still packing them in. Congratulations.
TV ratings are strong.
Oh, that's
Oh,
true.
yeah. The PFAS meeting town
Oh,
council had. It was-
that's a good one. For your record, I'm Ari Pollock. I'm a lawyer with Gallagher, Callahan, and Gartrell. I'm here tonight for Pillsbury Realty Development, which is the master developer of the Woodmont Commons planned unit development. I'm here tonight to deliver Woodmont's State of the Union address, if you will, and also to submit its fiscal impact study update, which we prepared for submission. First, as to the development update, 2019 was a very busy year for Woodmont, whereas in prior project years, we really had focused on development of upgrading and expanding the existing shopping plaza, and then on developing infrastructure that would support further development, roads, utilities, other systems. 2019 really saw a shift in focus to active development of buildings constructed along Main Street, which, for tonight's purposes, I'll call the center of the donut. Our first completed building was the 603 Brewery and Beer Hall. That was open to the public in June of 19. And those of you who have taken time to visit, I think, can attest to the quality of construction, the quality of the tenant, their products, and that they're providing already and will continue to provide an anchoring presence for Main Street. It's really exactly what we had hoped for, and we know that those guys are doing great there and enjoying the space. Our second completed building was the large 4-story mixed-use building next to the brewery. That building was completed in October of 2019. That was a 2-season build, pretty large undertaking. It's got 87 upper floor luxury apartments. A little less than half of those are now rented and occupied. And on its ground floor level, there are commercial units available for lease. One is now occupied by Orange Theory Fitness, that is open to the public. And a few others are actually the subject of LOIs and are to be fitted up and opened up this spring. So good things happening and coming to Main Street. Outside, the outer rim of the donut, we've focused on some opportunities to sell land and to sell some of our entitlement so that others can be developing at the same time as we're focused on development on Main Street. One good example of that, as this board knows, is the Edgewood retirement community, and we saw our purchaser come in and obtain site plan approval for their Baldwin concept. That's an upscale independent living community, which we'll be able to close with them later this spring in April, and their construction is planned to commence this summer. They've been doing a great job putting their package out for branding and moving their concept forward. Likewise, this board will recall that we had a subdivision granted for single-family lots on Gilcrest Road, and that property was recently sold to the Stabile Companies. Their site work on that parcel is well underway, and their construction is planned to commence this spring. They're going to be offering very attractive residential packages with excellent views of the pond and strong walkability to both Route 102 and across to the Woodmont Main Street. Looking forward from where we are today, and of course having invested substantial time and money on core infrastructure, we're now well positioned to see things pop for a few years. We're presently in discussion to bring in at least one restaurant and bar. You're going to ask me 10 different ways what it is, and I'm not going to answer, but I'm excited about it. A hotel, a medical office user, all to this Main Street area, and the graphic is up behind you, and it's not so visible to me at least, so I'll let you just sort of look at it on your own instead of trying to point things out. But
Well, we have it in front of us as well.
okay, so this is all in that Main Street corridor, if you will, where the existing buildings are located. These uses are all consistent with the master plan, the vision within the plan, and the entitlements that are baked into that plan. Obviously, everything comes forward for site plan review, but it's really encouraging to see things coming together as we had hoped. There's also a multifamily apartment proposal that's gone out. We're getting excellent interest there, and again, it's all part of the entitlement. Nothing is beyond what was envisioned in the master plan, and that too would come forward for subdivision and site plan reviews in terms of the details. Big picture or bigger picture, New Hampshire DOT has done a great job of finally obtaining the record of decision from the Federal Highway Administration for Exit 4A. It seems we've all been talking about this for a very long time, and I guess I always say that it's closer than ever, but this time I feel like I really mean it. And what this in turn has caused is that a number of our tire kickers, if you will, are really getting serious about letters of intent over on the east side of the highway, where on the graphic at least you see those large tracts of 120 acres, 80 acres. You know, it's really kind of an uncharted area of the project there. That's also going to require significant infrastructure investment. There isn't much to piggyback on there today. And so again, just as you saw that slower pace on the west side, which now is ready to pop because the table is set for folks to capitalize, I think you're going to see a mirror image on the east side where we have a slower pace infrastructure investment period that again will set the table for folks to come in, and we have sort of the first generation interest there now. In terms of the intangibles of Woodmont, one of the items I really do want to stress is we've had and we continue to have an excellent working relationship with town staff, whether it's Colleen or John, the planning board, the council, the peer review group, the building inspector's office, the code enforcement. Top and bottom, it's been a very validating relationship for a lot of the people who are interested in Woodmont and come here to quote unquote check us out. And that is a big part of our success. It will be a big part of our success. And so it's important to give a thank you for that relationship and that optimism and frankly, the confidence to have a master plan development on a big chunk of land and now seeing it come to fruition. Turning to the other reason we're here, which is the fiscal impact study, Pillsbury again turned to a familiar face, Lucy Gallo of DPFG. She had done our prior studies for the creation of the master plan and the expansion of the plaza, and she did another update through fiscal year 19, and her report is included in your packets, I believe, and I'm sure it'll get up on the website at some point. Long story short, Lucy has documented that the property taxes, the current use change payments, and the registration fees from the project areas amounted to, at this snapshot in time, a solidly positive fiscal impact for the town. In other words, it's not costing you money to host the project. This is, of course, not at all surprising, given the date of study, which is June 30th of 2019, a time that we didn't have any new residential occupants, and the brewery had just opened. The same can be said as of that date for the school portion of the study. The town's resources and the school's resources are both included in that document. And as of June 30th, 2019, there was actually 0 school impact. There were no new school-aged residents within the PUD. So again, it was an easy exercise for the first try, if you will. And so I think the more important part of the exercise was to zero in on a way to do this, so that year to year now, as we have residential use and as we have more occupants, and we're talking, we've sold a chunk of single family and we've got a multi-family component coming forward, we'll have a good way to document and approach this fiscal impact look-see to see whether things are in line or are out of line. And we've been very active with Colleen, and she in turn with the rest of the town staff, to make sure that this process is reliable, it's tracking accurate data, and we're answering questions when we get them. And so, for tonight's purposes, I want to just be clear that we're really able to start capitalizing on what was painstaking, expensive. If Mike were here now, he would underline expensive. But we're at that point where we're really able to show the fruits of our labors, and so everyone's patience has been greatly appreciated. And we're going to be regular customers again as things roll off. Some of it will be behind the scenes with staff as they fit into buildings and spaces that are already approved. Other things that are not part of that initial phase 1 will, of course, be in for subdivision and site plan. I'm happy to take questions, and I really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time on this with you.
Okay, it was good to hear the update. Colleen, anything?
So I'll just add that, as Ari said, in particular, the fiscal impact update, staff worked closely with them on providing the data, the finance department, human resources, on making sure that personnel data, that fiscal data was compiled. So the clerk's office preparing motor vehicle registration, and we recognize that this is going to be something that this is setting the framework for these annual updates that will be happening. Typically, it'll be based on the town's fiscal year, so ending June 30 of a particular year, and then normally the report will be able to be delivered by that December meeting to give you kind of the annual overall update. Took a little bit of extra time just to making sure that we had compiled data correctly and we're setting up a methodology. Because this is the first year where, as Ari said, there was one building occupied for about a month of this, no residential structures. There could be some changes and tweaks as we do start to have the residences coming on and figuring out the best way to present this information. But this is basically being provided as an information item, has been reviewed by town department heads just for accuracy and to make sure that they felt that it reflected appropriately their expenses this past fiscal year. So. There's no action required by the board on this, but it is an information item, and if you have any questions, I'd encourage you to ask Ari.
Okay, I'll go through the board anyway. Ian, anything?
I got a question on table 3. What is checklist?
Say again.
Table 3, town-filled positions report, comparative summary. Checklist, just curious.
I didn't hear the question part, I'm sorry.
my
Could you use your
face-
microphone? I'm having trouble hearing you.
15.
Okay, department checklist.
You're on page 15?
I'm on page 8.
Okay.
Oh, you're looking at the draft, so the draft has, Ari,
It got moved.
I think the filled positions
Table
report.
2 now, on
Table
page
2 now.
7.
Thanks, John.
Page 7.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, nope, that's okay, and there was just a revision this morning based on, it was
Okay, I got it from the
It was minor
website.
based on staff input. So, table 7, the filled positions, you wanna,
So Lucy did a pretty deep dive to come up with this data, and so we had Colleen go to department heads and figure out hiring and personnel so that we could see in the first instance if there had been an increase in budget and in personnel, and then if there was, make some assessment of how much of it was relevant to Woodmont. And so this table is just showing that over the, whatever this is, 3-year period, the hiring practices and employment of the town is very consistent.
And are you asking a checklist?
Yeah.
I think you're thinking of keepers of the checklist of
Yeah.
the voter rolls.
Yeah, what is that?
Yes.
Is that?
That is the keepers of the checklist are basically, it's a town department that.
Supervisors.
Is
Oh,
it
who is it?
Uh,
I have no idea.
It's an elected position,
Yes.
right?
They are.
And then
They-
how come town, if it's.
They are
if-
elected, but they
If
are.
it's one that gets a salary, how come
Yes.
town council and treasurer and other things like that are not?
I would need to check with the finance department and HR since they provided the report
Yeah, I'm
of the
just
position
curious.
summary. I'm not sure the answer on that, so I can check with finance and we can, if it was appropriate to update this to include other salaried positions, I don't know what their distinction is in running their
Just because we
reports.
vote on them, during the town voting, we vote on town councilors, supervisor of the checklist, town treasurer, and
I would need
and
to
other
talk to
things, so.
Justin and find out what their distinction is, because these numbers came from finance department.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know the question, it may be touchy subject, but we noticed that the soil on the Gilcrest Road site was being removed, and it was brought over to an area east of the former packing house.
Right.
What's gonna be done with that, and did it need to be tested, or was it ever tested?
It was tested. It's part of the agricultural soils from the orchards, and it's going to be placed in non-residential areas. It's able to be used in those locations. It was marginal for residential, and so the decision was made to move it out of there. And so we worked with staff to have a soils management plan where we could move it someplace, stabilize it, and then we can use it for authorized purposes around the project.
Okay, how is it being stabilized? Just, I noticed it had like grass growing on it, or?
Right, so the grass helps, well, John can certainly help me with this, but the grass stabilizes runoff and erosion, and there's silt fencing around the pile so that whatever does come down the sides of it is contained. We monitor it. I know that our contractor takes a look at it from time to time. It's essentially frozen solid and sitting there until the weather breaks, and then we'll take another look to make sure that that seed has taken well.
Yeah, it's quite a high mountain over there.
It's a big
I'm
pile.
just curious about that.
Right,
That's about it, thank you.
sure.
All set, Ann? Okay.
I'm all set.
Ted?
Good report. I think the only thing I was wondering about in here was any calls from DPW and police to the area that's currently there.
I think once we got the bugs out of the elevator in the big building, a lot of that quieted down. All I can tell you is they haven't, so what this report
Well, I
would.
guess this was only up till June of last year, so we
Right.
wouldn't really have a
So,
full
so there's
picture.
that issue, but also, in other words, the question is not how many times did you drive over there? The question really, for this purpose, is did you have to hire more people to do the task?
True.
And at least for the end of fiscal year 19, the answer was no. What is it going to be this year? I don't know. That's why we're going to need to do this on an annual basis.
Yeah, I think till we accumulate some data from this.
Certainly,
have a
certainly.
better
And
handle
I
on
think
it.
it's quite valuable to see how much the cumulative properties have paid in taxes over time to the town side and to the school side. And we'll see, clearly that'll just grow over time with the value of the buildings going up.
Exactly.
You guys have done a great deal of growing that from 30 million to 51 million in value, so
Right.
we look forward to future projects.
Keep spending.
Yep.
Keep on growing. Mary?
So because there were no residential places, I see why the school wasn't included in this, but your expectation is that next year it would be?
The school is included.
Well, not the same breakdown with school personnel,
Correct.
though.
That's exactly right. So we just showed the revenue side for the school portion, and also drew the conclusion that there was no impact because there was no enrollment. But certainly for next year, that will be something we'll have to investigate.
And this will just be till June 30th, 2020, right? So
Correct.
it'll be annually on the fiscal year.
And it's primarily because that's the way the property tax assessments
Right.
are rolled into the town budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tony?
I think it's a very good template for today and for moving forward as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just a simple question for anybody that's
Oh, sure.
watching. So far, Woodmont Commons is tax positive, am I correct on that?
Yes.
That's what a lot of people would want to know, so
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Yeah, that's been our overriding concern, is the tax positivity of it.
Yes.
Roger?
We've gotten quite a bit of change of use money from you, but I didn't see that in there.
It is in here. If you go to the, it's all right. If you go to the table on page 8, you'll see there is a land use change tax column of the table.
Okay.
We took a big chunk of what is now Main Street, if you will, the larger Main Street, out of current use. And that generated a significant payment at that time.
Can we expect more payments?
Not for the same area, but yes, there are others.
Thank you very much.
And Art, I think I'm just gonna tag off what Al said. For the tax positivity, the total properties in total have paid to the town side $1,869,704 cumulatively. And on the school side, $3,450,000. I think that's quite impressive over time. And I think we're just gonna see that grow.
Ian?
I have another question. I apologize for coming so late with this one. But the retention ponds that are right next to right to the east of the duck pond, how's that working out as far as filtration?
I couldn't really tell you beyond my personal observations, but I don't see any great fluctuation in water levels, so I have to conclude that that's good.
Question though again, Ann? How,
The retention, 2 retention ponds, that's
The
what I'm gonna call them right there,
detention.
to the east of the duck pond.
yeah.
They're supposed to filter out any
So again, right-
contaminants going from the parking areas to the east of them.
Yeah, so again, right now, if you, periodically, if you go by there, they kind of have that green tinge to them.
Yeah,
Because of the soils out there, and again, you see that they have a frac tank out there. So again, because of the materials that is out there, it's very silty material.
mhm.
So what they end up doing is they'll pump that down, run it through the frac tank. They'll through a flocculator to knock down the particles that are suspended in the water. So they'll create storage in the pond itself.
Mhm.
Then once it runs through the frac tank, they can discharge that. So after a rainstorm, again, because of the nature of those materials, it does tend to flocculate and it turns green. And it's
Yeah.
pretty it's pretty sediment laden. So they pump it down so they can have enough storage that way when a storm does occur, it can be stored in the pond. So right now, they're using it kind of as a combination of, because there's so much construction happening out there. But again, as far as detention, it's working fine.
But is that issue gonna be corrected?
It's
It will-
temporary, and actually,
Because of the construction.
right, so the only thing I would add to that, I mean, John's description of how it works is spot on, but to my knowledge, we have not been using or needing to use those tanks in the recent past. It was much more of an issue when the site was open and the soils were very silty and would run with the runoff. Now that we've got some grassed areas, we've got some landscaped areas, including around the ponds themselves, the need for that fracking or filtering has really reduced, and the ponds are able to handle it just with natural gravity flow without pumping and mechanical treatment. And so it's there. It made sense initially. As construction continues, it's a good safeguard, but I don't think we've been using those tanks in the recent past.
And when you drive down 93 South, or you see Coleman has one, Weaver Brothers had one, Audley has it. So again, unfortunately, it's just that the nature of that material along 93, they need to use the flocculation to.
We're actually looking forward to selling them, because apparently a lot of people need them.
Thank you very much.
One last question.
Yes.
How are the permits going with potentially clearing Duck Pond or being a usable pond?
Yeah, we haven't filed anything, so the answer is they're not going. It's still part of the vision. Frankly, the water level has come up to the point, just with natural beaver dam activity. Believe it or not, I always say it, they're the hardest working residents of Woodmont.
Yeah.
They work all the time.
They don't take a break. So the water level has come up by itself to the point that the water feature is really very attractive on its own. I don't know what our timing will be on making that different. It would be a pretty heavy lift on a permitting side to do a lot in there. And if it's going to be the attractive resource we wanted without manipulation, why mess with it?
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah, all right.
You're not losing, I'm sorry.
No, Ian, you go to
You're
the.
not losing any land on Gilcrest Road because of the increase in the level of the pond, are you?
No,
Okay,
we're doing just fine.
thanks.
With all the water that's in those detention ponds, might you need at some point, some kind of fountain or recirculator or whatever to keep that water moving so it doesn't get stagnant? There's quite a bit of water in there.
I'm happy to pass the question to our engineers, but you don't want a lawyer's answer. I have no idea. Fountains are nice, but whether they serve a practical
Well, I mean,
purpose or not.
not necessarily a fountain, but in other parts of the country.
Right.
To keep the mosquitoes
Circulate
out, keep the smell away, and keep the green goo out.
Something to keep the algae from
Technical term.
growing.
John, do you know?
But again, though, Tony, what they want now, they want wet ponds. So again, so that
Oh.
the outlet, elevation of the outlet, so there'll be a sitting water in there for 4 or 5 feet, and they don't want you agitating it, basically.
Oh.
Again, natural attenuation, and we'll add the oxygen to the water.
So, I learned something.
Screened-in back porches, right?
Say again?
Screened-in back porches
Yeah,
for all those homes.
If it becomes an issue, I suppose, but I haven't heard a thing.
If the board's all set, anyone else have any questions? You need to come forward, and I need your name and address, please.
Okay.
To a microphone.
Can I sit here?
Certainly. And Ari's a nice guy, so you can shake hands and.
Ray Bresson, 3 Gary Drive. I think it's nice that they're presenting this to keep everybody update as to what's going on. Very good idea. But as a lot of you folks probably know, you know what my thing is, protecting fresh water. And my question here is that the soil, which somebody else brought up, that was removed from Gilcrest and then relocated, technically, I guess it had pesticides in, so it's technically contaminated soil. They have covered that
Probably
with...
have to
what?
consult with them. We haven't seen any records of what contamination is or anything.
Okay, so, yeah, that's
That'd be a supposition on your part, Ray.
a supposition on my part, exactly. But the only way you could really tell that is to check the runoff from that, and that would be in the retention ponds, okay? I would strongly suggest, if it hasn't been done, that should be done. You know, it's one thing when we're talking about particles of soil in the water that has to be filtered out because the fish can't see what they're going to be eating. That's one thing, but that does not address contaminants in the water. In other words, what we're talking about here is runoff, storm water runoff. Anytime you dig up the soil, you have storm water runoff. That's of concern to us here in Londonderry. And so, my question is the water in the retention ponds being tested for contaminants? I'm not talking about mud, I'm not talking about silt, I'm talking about contaminants.
We can find that out anyway. Offhand,
Well-
I don't know.
Do we have it? Nobody knows?
I don't know what the leachability of whatever that pesticides that might be in the soil, does it actually leach out of the soil? I don't know that.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, so here's the problem with a lawyer answering an environmental engineering question.
Not a good idea.
You're not going to be satisfied with my answer.
No.
But do you want to hear it?
Don't, yes,
Oh.
absolutely.
So the answer is, we have an environmental consultant group that has advised us on these soil issues. Obviously, like anybody else, when you don't know for sure yourself what to do, you hire some expertise, and so that's what we've done. And my understanding through speaking with those consultants is that these particular constituents from the farming days are not known to be or not entirely soluble. And so they don't move with water and stormwater and eroded materials. They stay where they're placed. And so rather than chasing the spouts and the runoffs and the channels, what we've done is manage where they are placed and monitored that they stay where they are.
Okay, so that brings up another question, and that is, it was removed from one site, technically, I believe, by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, because supposedly it has pesticides in it. It's been moved to another location. When you remove contaminated soil, it cannot be moved to a clean site. Was it moved to a clean site, or was it moved to a contaminated site?
Yeah, I think it's another supposition on your part, Ray.
Yeah.
about
What?
That's another supposition on your part of what is a clean site. We don't know what a clean site is. You'll have to define it for us.
Well,
What I-
maybe, let him speak.
So again, you're not going to be satisfied with the layman's answer. But my understanding is that both the town and the state are aware of the relocation that we conducted. They don't have concern with it. It was within the project area as a whole, all of which was farmed as an orchard. And the folks at the state, who I believe you contacted, are aware of our activities.
Okay. That's all I got to say now.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. You can talk with the DES anytime, Ray.
oh. I do all the time, believe me.
I'm sure you're on first name basis.
I was up
with
to
them.
Concord today, you know? Guess who I met up there?
The governor.
No, he was busy. I did go to see him, however.
Not too
I know
busy for
you
you, Ray, I hope, you know?
No, I saw Mr. Dolan up there.
Oh, okay. Well, keep track of them. Okay, anyone else? If not, thank you very much, Ari. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So Ari, this is the last time I'll see you in this capacity. I've offered my resignation as I am moving out of town. So
I'm sorry to
really
hear
sorry.
that.
I am too,
Yeah.
because I've enjoyed working on the project with y'all, and I'm excited to see what will happen in the future.
Well, thank you for that. You've been a voice of reason, and I'll miss your contribution.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're coming up on 10 years on the whole project.
We're all getting older.
Yeah, I know.
We're gonna have a party, aren't we, Ari?
That's what I heard, yeah. I heard it was a staff-sponsored event.
Absolutely, yeah,
They were all going to chip in.
absolutely.
Really nice of you. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Okay,
So on
Next-
to
next-
elections.
next business is election of officers. So-
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Arthur Rugg for chair.
Second.
Give it to Al.
Okay, any other nominations? I don't hear any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Chair will abstain.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Chris Davies for vice chair.
Okay, motion by
Second.
Mary, second by Tony.
Tony can have this one.
Any other nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor of Chris Davies for vice chair signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Chair votes affirmative, and motion carries. And Chris has indicated last, a couple of weeks ago, that he was definitely, he would in favor of it, so.
Cool, I'm glad he'll accept it. Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Al Sypek for secretary.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mary, second by Tony for Al for secretary. Any other nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor of Al Sypek being secretary signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Show it.
Abstention.
One abstention. Chair votes affirmative, and Al is secretary.
And so I'll just say this, and you abstain too, but if you went into the voting booth, you'd vote for yourself, wouldn't you?
Yes, I have to admit that. I have voted for myself in the past when I was a candidate for office, so.
Right, and Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Scott Benson for Assistant Secretary.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mary, second by Al. Any other nominations for Assistant Secretary? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Chair votes affirmative, and Scott is Assistant Secretary, and Scott has agreed to continue on. He is recovering, and he thought he could make next week's meeting, but is not sure, but
I'm glad to hear
he'll
he's
be back.
recovering.
He's still interested, and he's
Good.
feeling better, so
Good.
that's a good sign.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to
Second.
adjourn by Mary, second by Roger. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, there's none, I heard everyone say aye, so we are adjourned. Thank you. Next week, we have a public hearing on portable storage containers. Colleen is gonna be,
Again? Another?
again, this is
Mary,
about a
we
year
wanted you to
now.
go out with a
Oh
bang,
my
you
gosh,
know?
I can't wait.
What a way to go out.
Yeah.
Yeah.